This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
U.S. crude oil stockpiles last week fell more than expected as strong refining activity continued despite Hurricane Beryl. While gasoline and distillate inventories rose, the Energy Information Administration, EIA, said on Wednesday. Crude inventories fell by 4.9 million barrels to 440.2 million barrels in the week ending July 12, the EIA said, compared with analysts' expectations in a Reuters poll for a 33,000-barrel draw. Crude stocks at the Cushing, Oklahoma, delivery hub for U.S. futures fell by 875,000 barrels last week, the EIA said. Brent crude and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were little changed following the report.
Oil prices extended gains on Thursday, buoyed by a bigger-than-expected decline in crude stocks in the United States, the world's largest oil consumer. Brent futures rose 41 cents, or 0.5%, to $85.49 a barrel by 0819 GMT, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude was up 69 cents, or 0.8%, at $83.54, with both having registered gains in the previous session. U.S. crude inventories fell by 4.9 million barrels last week, data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration showed on Wednesday. That exceeds a decline of 30,000 barrels forecast by analysts in a Reuters poll and a drop of 4.4 million barrels in an American Petroleum Institute report.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Construction of U.S. solar manufacturing plants by Chinese companies is surging, putting China in position to dominate the nascent industry, as other American factories struggle to compete despite federal subsidies. Chinese companies will have at least 20 gigawatts worth of annual solar panel production capacity on U.S. soil within the next year, enough to serve about half the U.S. market, according to a Reuters analysis of corporate statements, government documents, and interviews with 8 companies and researchers. The group includes 7 companies backed by Chinese firms including Jinko Solar, Trina Solar, Ya Solar, Longi, Honan, Runergy, and Boviet, according to the analysis.
China's diesel exports in June rose almost threefold compared to a year ago, data from the General Administration of Customs showed on Thursday, as domestic demand remained in the doldrums. China's diesel exports amounted to 820,000 metric tons last month. That was up 183% from year-earlier levels, albeit off a low base of 290,000 in June 2023, but down from May's 1.07 million metric tons. China's diesel demand has slumped on sluggish real estate and manufacturing activity as well as the increased penetration of trucks using LNG, rather than diesel. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. China's imports of unwrought aluminium and products jumped 16% to 240,000 metric tons in June, customs data showed on Thursday. Imports in the first half of this year totaled 2.04 million tons, up 70.1% from the same period a year earlier, according to the data from the General Administration of Customs. The data include primary metal and unwrought, alloyed aluminium. The light metal is traditionally used in the construction, transportation and packaging sectors.
Aluminium prices fell to their lowest in more than 3 months on Thursday, while Shanghai nickel dropped to its lowest in over 4 months, due to rising output in major producing countries. The most traded August aluminium contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange closed down 0.1% at 19,765 yuan, $2,724.59 a metric ton. The contract had touched its lowest since March 28 at 19,590 yuan earlier in the session. 3-month aluminium on the London Metal Exchange was up 0.7% at $2,418.50 a ton, as of 0726 GMT. It fell as much as 0.3% earlier in the session to $2,394, its lowest since April 3.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
India is likely to cut the floor price for basmati rice exports and replace the 20% export tax on parboiled rice with a fixed duty on overseas shipments, government sources said, as rice inventories in the country jumped to record high. The world's biggest rice exporter imposed various curbs on exports in 2023 and continued them in 2024 in an effort to keep local prices in check ahead of the general elections held in April to May. New Delhi is expected to lower the basmati rice's minimum export price to $800 to $850 a metric ton, down from $950 a ton, to boost shipments, said the sources, who didn't wish to be identified as they are not authorized to talk to media.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.